Hi, my name is Pat Adams, a spiritual director and blogger about the spiritual life. The consuming interest of my life has been this: how do we live a life centered in God? And yet deeper still, who am I really? What is my purpose? How do I connect deeply with God? These are the questions I will address in this video series. What in the world can that mean, to trust in God? Our nation, our people, and ourselves are meant to trust in God. At least the Bible talks about it all the time, particularly in the Psalms and Isaiah and Jeremiah. Here's how Psalm 125 puts it in verses 1 and 2. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken, but endures forever. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people, both now and forevermore. Trust in God means that no matter what happens to us, we live embraced by the arms of the Lord, free of anxiety and fear and jealousy and anger. We hold hope in and love of the Lord as our highest virtues, knowing that nothing can happen to us as long as the Lord and I are facing it together. It's not at all that we are freed from all illness and trauma and natural disasters. We can suffer a lot. We can find our bodies trembling at a huge trauma and know that no matter whether we live or die, we are fine in God's hands. We cannot be shaken. We endure forever. What we are proclaiming with our whole selves is that nothing can happen to us that is without divine design and divine help in dealing with it. It's actually easy to say and to believe that we trust in God, but are we actually living without fear and trembling and anxiety about the future? There's a huge gap between saying something and living it. We may say it and not mean it at all, that there is in ourselves much evidence to the contrary, fears and anxiety, trying to control situations, praying only for the solution we desire, anger at what has happened, fear for the future. None of this says that we trust in God. Trust in the Lord is the key issue for us people of God. It's the hardest thing to bring to the altar because we are a fickle people wanting what we want when we want it. And we know from the evidence of history that God does not save us from wars and hurricanes and disasters like illness and death. Father Richard Rohr speaks of God as the great allower, allowing us humans to be who we are and do what we do without interference. We delude ourselves by believing that our beliefs convey everything we need to be before God, because we don't really want to give up control. More than likely, we're hoping to look like we trust in God much more than we actually do. The issue is one of integrity. Am I the same on the inside as I profess to be on the outside? Do I proclaim loudly my trust and faith in and my love for God, and on the inside I'm filled with jealousy and anger and fear? To live trusting in God is a real workout for us humans, and it is something I believe we have to live into, not just proclaim about ourselves. It is a commitment, prompted by God through a suggestion or a dream or in other subtle ways that we need to adopt as our own, that we need to answer with setting our intention to place total trust in God. I had a dream like that 3 years ago about attending a troupe of acrobats doing a public performance in a Cirque du Soleil kind of setting. Every single move that these 6 acrobats did was met by another and another and another at just the right time, in just the right way. In reflecting on the meaning of the dream for me, I felt that God was saying to me that I could trust him to meet all my needs, just as I needed them, just as these acrobats absolutely counted on each other to be where they were supposed to be. For me, it was an invitation to live into trusting that God would always meet my needs at the right moment. I knew I couldn't just summon that trust immediately, but that I could certainly set an intention to totally trust in God, and thereby open the door to the Spirit's healing in this area of my life, and let Him do the transformation. Living into something means that you do absolutely intend to do this, but in reality you have no idea of how that could work in your life, or how to make it happen. So you do call on the Holy Spirit's help. And as time goes by, you reiterate your intention, because this is such a big issue, a core issue in our dependence on the Lord. My experience over the last 3 years is that I am much more trusting that my needs will be met by God. One small example happened the day last June that the movers were loading my stuff onto their truck in Baltimore when I was moving to Charlotte. I lived in a large apartment complex there where you had to reserve the freight elevator in advance in 3-hour increments. So I had reserved the elevator from 9 to 12. By 11 a.m., I could see that the movers would not be done until well after 12. So I walked down to the office to see if someone else had reserved the elevator after me. Sure enough, another resident had the elevator from 12 to 3. As I walked back to my apartment, I was talking to the Lord. "You're going to have to fix this, Lord," I said, "because there isn't anything I could do about it." That was my prayer. I didn't worry about the outcome. Sure enough, my van was just leaving at 1:30 when the other van was pulling in. I had felt sure that the Lord would take care of it, and He did. So in most of my life now, what to say and what to do and how to go about it, I'm trusting in God to meet my needs. When I get on the road in my car, I struggle with trust more. I was raised in a family that was always on time, if not a few minutes early. So timeliness is deeply ingrained in me. So when I'm on my way somewhere and I have just enough time, I think, to get there, I'm liable to get angry at the car ahead of me or impatient with someone in my way. So I'm living into trusting God in this area too. What's so interesting to me is that no matter what is happening on the road and in my mind, I'm still pretty much on time. What that says to me is that the Lord is working in His ways, and my problem is just my problem. I need to give up trying to control this aspect of my life and just let God do it. So I'm living into that trust on the roads too. It is countercultural to trust in God. Our American ideal is of the self-made person, of following one's individual destiny, of controlling our lives, of making everything happen. To trust in something outside of ourselves is really risky, we think, not at all in the image of the self-made men and women that is a core value in our lives. But the payoff in really trusting God is the release of anger and anxiety and fear. 13 years ago, when my husband was back in the hospital with a recurrence of cancer, and I was wishing I could just crawl under the covers and pull them over my head and forget what was happening in my life, I clearly heard the Lord saying that if I could entertain all the possible outcomes in this situation, well, then. As soon as I could let go of my desire that he live in good health, that was the only thing I wanted, and acknowledge that in any situation there are literally thousands of possible outcomes, my energy returned and I was full of joy and sorrow. I have never felt so alive. I now count on the Lord to fulfill my needs, to be there like the acrobats, at the right place with the right thing. And I'm working on the getting somewhere on time problem. We either trust or we don't. We're either anxious or we're not. We can move there gradually, as I've described, but we know from our own inner state what the truth is about us trusting God. If we can't trust God, then we trust ourselves or others, and that is a disaster waiting to happen, as inconstant as we human beings are. Only God is reliable all the time. Only God is unchanging. Only God is eternal. Only God is. Everything else, including ourselves, is ephemeral, here today, gone tomorrow. So if you're going to trust in someone, trust in that which is immutable and always dependable. Trust in the providence of God. Thank you for watching. I look forward to hearing from you soon.